Drifting is one of the most important parts of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, allowing you to get incredible speed boosts and take corners far more efficiently. It's by far my favorite mechanic, and the game just wouldn't be the same without it. But what's the longest amount of time that you can stay in a drift for? The answer is infinitely. There's some very specific places on some courses where you can hold a drift for as long as you want. But how many courses can you actually do this on? To answer this question, I decided to go into every single track and find a way to drift infinitely on each of them. The only rules for this challenge are that for a drift to be considered infinite, you have to pass the place that you started at 3 times without using any mushrooms and without breaking the drift. Brake drifting is allowed because while it does require manual inputs, you don't stop drifting, and it will be incredibly helpful by making it much easier to control where I go. Some of these were really simple, while others were so impossible that they aren't even worth mentioning, so I won't go into detail about them, but I will still show them all once I'm done. The first course is Mario Kart Stadium. This track doesn't have many open spaces apart from this area right here. The only problem with this is that there is a ledge right in the middle of it, which is far too high to drift over. I was, however, able to go the other way, fall off the ledge, maneuver to a part where there was no ledge, brake drift to avoid going into the grass, and repeat it all over again 3 more times. Moving on, we have Sweet Sweet Canyon. When I first saw this track, I almost immediately wrote it off because there aren't any places on the course even close to being large enough, but after taking a closer look, I realized that you can actually switch between these 2 twisting paths. I was able to come up with a path between them that should theoretically allow me to drift forever, but when I tried, I fell just short. Then I remembered I was actually on 150cc because it allowed me to drift much tighter than on 200cc, but right now I needed all the speed I could get. After switching, I was just barely able to make it over to the other path, and while it took me a while to get the angle just right, I managed to make it around 3 times. After trying to drift up this wall in Thwomp Ruins, I realized that the island in the middle of the lake could be drifted around fairly easily as long as you avoided these pillars. Twisted Mansion, for the most part, is just long, thin corridors with barely any open area, so I was a bit worried that it wouldn't be possible. But in the courtyard right after the glider ramp, there's a fountain with a road that I was just barely able to stay inside. I tried quite a few different things on Shy Guy Falls, but there weren't any places with flat ground that I could drift on. I tried doing it on the big waterfall near the end of the course, but the water current was too strong to make it back up, even on 200cc. On Sunshine Airport, I was able to drift around in this area. It was a bit of a pain because I kept hitting the boxes, but in the end I managed to get the timing down and make it around 3 times. And then came the hardest course yet, Rainbow Road. I tried for hours to find a viable strat on this one, but nothing worked. This area was the most promising, but it was just barely too small, and these movement panels would push me the wrong way, making it impossible to stay in a drift. But before I gave up, I had one more thing I wanted to try. As you probably know, Rainbow Road has 2 different paths that you can pick that intertwine with one another, and similarly to the paths on Sweet Sweet Canyon, you can switch between them. After struggling to find a good spot to try this at, I settled on this part near the end. My plan was to drift off of this backwards and come around here before cutting through this small sliver of track and landing back on the original path. There were a lot of problems with this. It was incredibly difficult and inconsistent to get onto this path because if I was even slightly off, I would either fall short or completely overshoot. And this wasn't helped at all by these boost towers, which pretty much guaranteed I'd fall off if I hit them. And then cutting through this little slice was also incredibly hard because in order to get the correct angle to land on the path below, I actually had to go through the off-road section. Now it is possible to go through this small path of off-road and still stay in a drift, but it is entirely dependent on how much speed I come at it with. This made it difficult to stay consistent since I really have to worry more about staying on the actual track than managing my speed. But after just a few hours of attempts, I finally managed to make it around 3 times, marking off another course. Baby Park is the next track that I tried for a really long time. This course is really thin and constrained, making it impossible to circle drift on any part of it. But I had my sights set a little bit higher, going around the entire course. After testing it once or twice, it seemed just barely within the realm of possibility. I discovered that I could bonk into this wall as many times as I wanted, and it would never take me out of the drift, which allowed me to finish this side of the course with ease, but the other side was a completely different story. On this part, there's a big pillar that is just barely inside the wall that stops me from being able to do the bonking method from before. I even tried to switch my kart to one with inside drift or one with more handling, but the difference it made was pretty unnoticeable. But after mentioning it to a friend, he decided to try and managed to make it all the way around 3 times by using a different kart combination and some really precise maneuvering to avoid the pillar. The next 20 courses were either completely impossible or really easy, with the only notable exceptions being Yoshi Valley, which was solved by drifting in this area and dodging the egg, and SNES Rainbow Road, which was really close in multiple spots, but was just barely impossible. Ice Outpost also seemed to be possible at first. I tried utilizing the different shortcuts on this course, and it turns out that on the last one right before the finish line, you can actually drift off of the ramp early to make it all the way around. On Shroom Ridge, I tried using this vertical air shaft to get pushed back up after drifting off the course, and while it did let me stay drifting while in midair, I just couldn't get high enough no matter what I tried. On Sky Garden, I attempted to use the main course in combination with the Leaf shortcut, which, public service announcement, is actually much slower than just taking the normal track, because you get slowed down by bouncing on the leaves, and it's just so much more worth it to get the Super Mini Turbo. Anyway, I was able to go along the leaves once with no problems, but when trying to come around again, I couldn't quite get the right angle and would fly off every time. On Calamari Desert, there's this large oval shape formed by the intersection of the drivable course and the tracks that the train goes along. I tried making my drifting circle large enough to make it around, but I just couldn't do it. There were multiple times that I got almost all the way around, and after switching up my kart combo, I was able to do all of the problematic sections individually, but when I put them together, it simply wasn't possible. On Mushroom Gorge, I couldn't immediately see any obvious spots for infinite drifting, so I needed to get a bit creative. Right here before the big cavern with the mushrooms, there are 2 different options for paths that you can take. And the thing is, these paths form an oval, meaning it might be possible to make it all the way around between them. The only problem is that I wasn't able to go back down the second path without Lakitu picking me up. After looking into this further, I was able to determine that this happened because of an annoying feature of the checkpoint system. Once you pass by one of these key checkpoints, the game locks you onto the path that you're currently on by making it so that if you try to go down the other path, Lakitu picks you up. The other path is completely locked until you hit the next key checkpoint that joins the 2 paths together, but this one was so far out of the way that it would be practically impossible to hit it and then make it in a circle all the way around. I was just about to leave the course, but I discovered that this section was actually barely large enough to infinite drift on 150cc. I was able to do the next track, Sky High Sunday, in this area with some really precise brake drifting, and from there on, pretty much every course was straightforward, except for a few tracks that were a long way off from being possible. After completing the final circle on Wii Rainbow Road, I threw all the data into a spreadsheet to get a final total of 75 courses. There are a lot more possible courses than I expected. I'm pretty confident in my results as I can't see a way to do any of the other courses I marked off on my list, but if someone does find a method to do one of them, let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, because I am a channel that is trying to grow and likes help get this video recommended to more people. I will try to make similar content to this in the future, and you will most likely only see my videos again if you are subscribed. Thank you, and have a nice day.